Last video, we talked about how to install the Kubernetes cluster using kubeadm. If you guys have not checked it out, uh, just go back and check. That is the first video which I put on Kubernetes. So this video will focus on how do we use the Kubernetes cluster, right? So you can, now let's say I'm on my laptop. So I'm gonna do kubectl get nodes. So you can see that now I have my control plane, which is my master node, and my worker node already ready, right? And if you look at kubectl get pods, I don't have any pods in my default namespace, right? So now one of the things which I wanted to tell you guys is that uh, every time you have to type that kubectl command, right? So in order to avoid that, what we can do is create a alias and say alias k is equal to quotes kubectl. So now I can say k get pods, or I can say k get nodes, and I don't need to type the whole thing again, the kubectl, right? Then other thing is actually what we can do is, let's see how we can deploy a pod onto this, right? So in order to deploy a pod, you can use command like kubectl. I can say run, and I will give the pod name. In this case, I can give pod 1, pod 2, or in this case, I gave name as nginx so that I know that in that pod, nginx server is running, right? And then I can say image is equal to nginx. Now this particular thing, which is nginx, this image has to be nginx. You cannot give something else. Means whatever you give, make sure that that is available on the Docker repository. So in this case, it is nginx, which is Docker, standard Docker released nginx image. So I'm just going to deploy that, and you can see that my pod is created, right? So in order to see that, I can do k get pods, and you can see that my pod is running. So I have one pod running out of one, right? So out of one, I have one pod running. So I can see more details on the pod, like I can do k, let's say describe pod nginx, and then it shows me what all happened, right? So it shows me this pod is running on 10.0.0.169 node. And so this way I know where the pod is running. So my scheduler has two options, either put it on the one of the nodes, right? So it just put on 10.0.169. And then you can see that the image was pulled into the default namespace onto this node, and then the container got created, and then it started the container as well, or the container started and it's other way around, right? So it created container nginx, and then it pulled the image in that uh, into the default namespace, and on the node 100.169. Oh, sorry, 10.0.0.169. So this is how you can see what is going on, right? I can also look at what all pods are there in the other namespaces. For example, you can see that I have the system namespace, and these are the system pods which are running. Now, if I want to delete the pod, I can just go ahead and say kubectl delete pod nginx, and that will pretty much delete my pod, right? Now let's try something else. Let's try to create a pod which is redis k run. I can give the name of the pod, and then I can say image is equal to, let's say, redis 123. Okay, so the pod got created. I can go ahead and check the pod, and you can see that there is a status is error image pull. So that means looks like there is some problem with this pod. So if I do k describe, okay, and pod redis, it shows me that the pod name is redis. It's in default namespace. Then it is scheduled on 169 and the status is pending, right? So that means the status is not correct here. If you look at the previous pod which we created, the status was running, right? And in this case, the status is pending. That is, something is wrong. So if I go down below, you can see that the error here, failed to pull image redis 123, and the repository does not exist, this pod, right? So how do I fix that problem? In order to fix, I can change this and do this, but it will say no, the pod already exists with the same name, right? So what I can do is delete this pod redis, and then recreate, right? And now if I do go ahead and describe this pod, you can see that the redis pod is working fine, right? So the status is running. So we'll see more exercise with this. Thanks for attending. Stay tuned. Thank you. Bye-bye.